How many of you are familiar with the root? Thank you. For those of you who read, we thank you. For those of you who don't, you should. For those of you who do and don't like this, keep reading. You'll have a breakthrough. This is Julius Onah, who is the director of LUCE. And please. If you are anything like me, this was my second viewing of the film. If you're anything like me, you are a little bit breathless right now. So you might need a minute to calm down, and that's okay. That said, we don't have a lot of time, so this is not going to be your typical Q&A. So, unfortunately, we'll not be taking questions from all of you, and I'm sure you've got a lot, so I'm hoping to do you justice. But can I just ask one question off the bat? And just be honest, who, in any way, shape, or form, felt somewhat triggered by this film? You can raise your hands. I see. Oh, see. Me too. Me too. And that's part of the power of this film, right? Like it's.
We wanted to be honest. We wanted to be truthful, and it gets raw.
Raw is a word. That is a word. It says provocative on the poster, but I don't know that most people are expecting it. I was not expecting it, and I watched this alone for the first time last night. And I had to make a list, so I made this list that I've rewritten 18 times. Because I'm actually amazed by it. We have this saying, we're like, the layers, right? The layers. And there's so many layers in this film, and I'm not even going to get all of them. I mean, I counted, we've got transracial adoption, assimilation, white guilt, respectability politics, child soldiers, nature versus nurture, weapons in school, microaggressions, macroaggressions, white savior complexes, colorism, mental health, double consciousness, and yet it never felt overwrought to me. Privacy. Independence, freedom. America. The immigration experience. And yet I think, do a lot of people know, so this is an adapted screenplay. This was originally a stage play, which I'm still trying to figure out that part. So tell me a little bit about what attracted you to this movie.
I thought the play was brilliant, and my friend JC, who wrote it, just created something that had so many layers to it. But what was great about it was it wasn't prescriptive. It wasn't trying to tell you what to think or what to believe. It was creating a very complex, complicated, and honest situation, and giving everybody a window into it and allowing them to project their thoughts, feelings, beliefs. And I felt that that was just so rare to see for this kind of story. Once I was done reading it, the first words out of my mouth were "holy shit."
Mine too.
And then I said, I want to turn this into a movie.
And there is a personal streak in this for you. So LUCE obviously is an immigrant to America, although he's obviously very well, almost scarily assimilated. And you have your own immigration tale that I read that attracted you to this.
Yes, I was born in Nigeria. I moved to America when I was 10. I lived in Arlington, Virginia, where in the play it was set in a nondescript suburban kind of anywhere America, and for the adaptation I set it in Arlington just because it was the world I knew, and it was a world that I felt you could take the issues and ideas of the film and kind of transpose it in a way that felt very organic.
I mean, I think part of the reason it is so triggering is that we all recognize ourselves in this, no matter what race you are, what class you are. I mean, like for instance, for me, there was a line that just stuck out to me, and I heard people in the audience react to it. It's a scene where LUCE is sitting with his friend, and his friend was like, I mean, you're black, but you're not like black, right? And I was that friend. I was in high school in Minnesota, and I was that friend who was comfortably black for my white friends, and I was like, hurts. Like that hurt. I mean, I also am the sister of an adopted brother, and I think, you bring up some really interesting nature versus nurture issues here. And I think you also bring up some really interesting issues about how white guilt itself, white savior complexes, white guilt, whatever you want to call it, can become its own kind of disability, its own blindness in a sense. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, look, these are people who are trying to do the right, well-meaning thing in adopting this kid. But the way they project expectations on him, the way they define who he's allowed to be and put him in a box, you saying you had that experience of being the acceptable friend, that scene, which wasn't in a play, it was one based on a real experience I had when I was a senior at Washington League High School, which is now Washington Liberty High School. They decided to change the name. We can unpack that one another time. When I was a senior and somebody said that in the middle of chemistry class, and nobody batted an eye, and it was a way of saying, oh, I accept you, or we accept you, while completely negating who you are in your existence. So I think we're having this very powerful conversation right now in this country about identity, whether it's on the basis of race or gender or class. But the question that's interesting to me is who has full access, who has access to the full spectrum of humanity, who gets to be human on every level, and who has to live their life on a symbolic level in order to be accepted. And all you need to do is see the transfer of power from one person to another in the presidency of this country to know how to answer that question, I think, truthfully.
I am inclined to agree. So, on that note, you did something really interesting. I don't know if this was in the original, but you're not going to go my notes. I'm going to have to wing it. Chivalry's not dead yet. Thank you. There's that incredible moment when Deshaun, this is a really incredibly nuanced moment in respectability politics, when Deshaun and LUCE are in the parking lot, and Deshaun said, well, somebody has to be the Obama, and I thought that was so crazy. Yeah. First of all, we're in Chicago, so this is Obama, man. But additionally, I mean, if he reminds you of anybody, if Kelvin Harrison in this role reminds you of anybody, it's Obama, the whole film, who was also predominantly raised by his white guardians. An incredible human being, an incredible person, but also very acceptable. And in a lot of ways, I would say your get out of racism card to a large segment of a population. Did you guys put that in, or was that there originally? And how, you just dropped it there like this little bomb.
You know, one of the things I love about that scene in particular, and it's something JC and I always talked about, is you see this incredibly bright kid who runs circles around everybody, teachers, faculty, his parents. And it's Deshaun who actually turns the tables on him and puts him in his spot. It's the first time.
Yeah,
He can't out of it. It's like, I see you, I see what's going on. And we just felt it spoke so much as to how the Deshaun's of the world get underestimated because they don't fit in the acceptable box. So it was important to see that point of view. And there was something Octavia would always say, because she understands Harriet's mission, but she doesn't agree with the application of it. Because she feels, and I agree, it's not just about the LUCEs of the world, it's about everybody else who gets left behind. So when we say this person is acceptable, it's often an excuse to not do the work to give a level playing field to everybody else. And that's an important conversation to be had that I don't think we have nearly often enough, especially when it comes to the way woke politics gets played these days.
That's, I think you're dead on. Oddly enough, Michelle Obama was just featured in, she was just interviewed by Meghan Markle, and she made a quote, and she said something about, if she talked to her 15-year-old self now, that she doesn't think her 15-year-old self would let her off the hook, because there's still girls on the south side of Chicago getting shushed and being told that who they are and what they have to offer is important. And I think that that very much speaks to that. But on the subject actually of Octavia Spencer, who does an incredible job in this role, and you were telling me that she was the first person to come on board who then attracted all these other award nominated and winning talents to this project, and well deserved, because the script really deserves it. She plays such an important role in this. I think she has such a strategic function, and it's one that we also don't talk about enough. The whole film, she talks a lot about protecting LUCE, and we don't always see it. But one of the things that I know in Black feminist circles we talk about a lot is this sense of Black women feeling like they're protecting Black men and boys at their own expense. And we see Octavia gets thrown under the bus here. I assume that was deliberate.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about how power works in a truthful way. And, that scene, the whole movie builds to that scene when LUCE comes into her house. And she tells it to him completely unvarnished. And she has no sense of regret about what she chooses to do, because, look, you might want to think that the world is going to accept you for who you are, or who you want to be, but there's the truth of how power works. And she experiences it herself. You know, when we were rehearsing, Naomi and Octavia and I, we would often talk about what would that big scene with the principal look like if it was Deshaun and his mom came in. It would not be that outcome. So when you want to talk about how white privilege gets weaponized, you see that illustrated in that scene. One of the things I think that is so shocking for people in that moment, in that scene, is they're watching a young black man get away with the kind of things young black men often aren't allowed to get away with, or black people in general. So it was very important for us to illustrate that truthfully. You know, a depiction is not an endorsement. I mean, there's nothing more heartbreaking for me. When we were shooting that scene and Octavia gave that monologue, I was in tears when I came to her doctor afterwards, because she poured everything, a lifetime of experience, to get to the level that she's gotten to in her career. She's an incredible, amazing woman. And the fact that she was the first person who came on board to see that we could get this film made. You know, JC is a person of color, me as a person of color as well. That speaks volumes about her, but that aside, it speaks volume about her commitment to telling these kinds of stories and speaking that truth, because I think if we are ever going to dismantle the kind of systems that continue to be in place, we have to be able to look them straight on. And we have to be willing to move beyond just symbols. I don't think symbols dismantle systems.
Say that. All right then. We can applaud. It's fine. And you know, it's. I couldn't help but note, and I don't know if this was in the script, that you allowed that character to be from the same place that Octavia is from. She's from Montgomery, Alabama, and that's a very potent place to be from. Also, that scene, so that pivotal scene in the principal's office, and hopefully I will not offend most of you in here, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. My editor-in-chief and I were unpacking that this afternoon, having both seen this, and we were like, that was like legit the most like 53% white woman moment that we've ever seen, ever. Like, that flip, you know, we watch Naomi Watts' character, Amy, who goes from mom to being Amy. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
That she starts out as mom and she becomes Amy, which is like its own kind of like weird, cold thing. And she has this palpable, tangible fear of this black child, this black body that she's invited into her home. You see it in these earlier scenes, and it flips because it doesn't fit her narrative of who she wants to be. Right? I mean, okay, I'm glad I got that right. So those are the words. I'm not sure it's right. And I just thought it was so fascinating. It was fascinating to me.
Well, look, we create all these narratives of who we think we are and what we're projecting. And what was interesting about telling this story is you have a group of people who have these beliefs that are often not actually put to the test. Well, what happens when they are put to the test, right? It's easy to get on Twitter or internet and profess the right things and say the right things. But what happens when push comes to shove? What choice are you going to make? What decision are you going to make? And that often is how supremacy works. It's not what you say, it's what you do when you have something to lose. And what was interesting about the story and the arc that Amy has in this film is it truly is a story of an awakening, a woman coming to terms and to realize the power she has, the choices she's made, the things she's done that are well-meaning to support her son, but the ways in which she also has constricted her son. But when she comes to full awareness of it, that's where the final moment of privilege kicks in, which says, but I don't want to acknowledge this. I can just tuck this away and move on, because it would shatter the entire reality, shatter the entire narrative I've created. But that said, I never wanted to villainize any of the characters in this movie. I love all these characters. I have to love a character if I'm going to spend years of my life telling a story about them. I knew the Amy's and Peters of the world. I knew the Luces of the world. I've had experiences of the Luces of the world. I've also had experiences of the Deshaun's of the world. And we've all known areas in our lives who helped us get to where we get to with that kind of tough love. But the truth of the situation they're dealing with is much bigger than that. And it was important to honor that truth in all of these characters. And to not villainize any of them, and to dramatize how, even in the best intentions, in the best situations, because we live in the system that we live in and we're unwilling to unpack that system, awful, terrible things can happen.
Awful and terrible, and I'm gonna ask another question since we don't get to open this up to audience Q&A, but I had this moment and I definitely felt a way about having this moment. Who thought, let's say within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film, who was like watching LUCE and thought, so he may have some sociopathic tendencies. Thank you.
Well, then there's some of you didn't think
Some
that.
of you did not. Some of you did not. And I admit that I did. And I definitely felt a way about the fact that I did. But what I do hope that people take away from this particular narrative, and I'm glad that you introduced that as a possibility in the first 5 to 15 minutes of the film. It's there for you. If you want it, it's there throughout the entire film. If you want to see it, if that's what you want to see, if that's what you want to see.
Principal Danny, you don't want to see it, you don't have to.
But one of the things that, we live in a very polarized world at this particular moment in time. And the fact is a lot of people are forgetting that both things can be true. And they're also forgetting that, yes, this may be true, and there may also be a why is it true. And I found myself at that first 10, 15-minute juncture being like, okay, that could be true. There may be tendencies. That doesn't mean he's a sociopath. He may have abilities. But I was really struck by the why. And I think that's the power of this particular film, is it's really asking you to unpack the why. And it doesn't ask you to leave with the answer, right?
If there was an answer, there'd be no point to make the movie.
There you go.
You know, if there was an answer, why would we continue to struggle with this? But I think that why is really important. When I was at Sundance, I'll leave it to your imaginations who or what this person might have looked like, but somebody came up to me and said, well, what do we do about the LUCEs of the world? And in the back of my mind, I'm saying to myself, well, what do we do about the world that creates the LUCEs that we live in? Because if we're unwilling to look at that world and that system, the alienation that one can live through, the psychic and emotional stress that can fracture one's sense of self and identity. LUCE left one war zone, a literal war zone, and came into the emotional and psychological war zone of race and privilege and class in America. And despite everything that is given to him, he's still, whether passively or actively, denied full access to humanity. And so many of us, of different backgrounds, are denied that. I was watching the debates before I came over here, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to go home and watch, but we're in this again, real conversation right now about how America is going to be reimagined going forward. Who's going to get to be America? Who's going to get to be human? And until we really start to confront what the implications of those questions are and the things that make us uncomfortable, I don't think we're going to find those answers. And for me, telling this story was a part of my personal process, but hopefully to share with other people as well, of starting to look at the things that scare us.
And I think it's a powerful lesson, the fact that things that scare us are the way through. For everybody, because to your point, everybody has a sense of humanity in this film. Everybody also has a question kind of waiting at the end of the day. How are we doing on time? Just so I'm clear. We are. Okay, so I know you've probably heard this before, and I couldn't help, but I just can't help but draw this correlation because, so you adapted this from a play.
Yeah.
I'm a theater person, so I'm into that kind of thing. And this reminded me of this is a new favorite for me, this film. I'm saying this off the bat, I have no problem saying that. It reminded me of another of my favorite films adapted from a play of all time, which is 6 Degrees of Separation. You guys, anybody familiar with 6 Degrees of Separation? Okay. Except for I was like, this is like 6 Degrees of Separation with 6 degrees of, oh my God, on top of that. Is that something you guys were cognizant of while you were making it? This sense of double consciousness. You can't help, the Dunbar poem runs through your head while you're watching, we wear the masks, How conscious of that, how is that informing? How do you
Absolutely. That is the existential crisis that LUCE is living through, and that many people live through when you're dealing with this idea of being put in a box, or being acceptable, or being black versus being not black, or whatever the case might be. Some people have to check their baggage, and some people don't. So whether it's the Dunbar poem, or Dubois, or the references to the movie The Fanon, those were all things that were very conscious. What we didn't want to do, what I didn't want to do, was stop the movie to give a lecture on those things, but to, again, let those things be a part of the fabric of the story, because I think it's there when you observe these characters and the choices and the decisions and the journey that they take over the course of the film. But until, again, we unpack that and create a level playing field where we accept the fact that people, as you said before, can be more than one thing, and there can be more than one truth to someone, and that we all contain multitudes. There's a lot we're going to be missing from the conversations we should be having.
I almost want to just end it right there because that was amazing. I really want to thank you so much for this film. I want to thank the Chicago International Film Festival as well for welcoming us and co-hosting this with us, because they are such an incredible facilitator of great art and great conversations, and I'm so happy to be here with you, and I'm so happy to have seen this film, and I hope everybody sees it. And I hope everybody gets it. Tell your friends to see this and keep an open mind, and I hope people get it. It's so important to look behind the mask of what we're seeing around. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Julius Onah.